What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Berm, and today we are going to be ranking the returning Pokemon in the new Pokemon DLC, the Indigo Disc, from Incineroar to rank D, as far as my opinion is concerned. Before we begin, if you wouldn't mind liking, commenting, subscribing, helping this video reach more people, helping the channel grow, I'd appreciate that. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, trying to get there by the end of the year. We're at 8,500 right now, hoping this DLC can help push things. But even if we don't get it, even if we get closer or whatever, thank you so much for helping in clicking buttons to push the algorithm to more people. We've been on this push for the past couple of months, and it's been really, really cool to see how the channel has been growing. Thank you so much, especially to the regular viewers who are here all the time. I appreciate you. Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is typically when I'll stream. This week will be, I think, maybe the last stream of December, unfortunately, because of the holidays and everything coming up after that. But if you hit the notification bell, you will be aware of the fact that if I'm streaming or if I'm not streaming. That way, you know, you'll get notified when a stream is coming up and all of that good stuff. A few disclaimers before we begin this tier list. This is by Cerebee's account, okay? And these are also Pokemon that are confirmed, I think, via like trailer and stuff. So if there are more Pokemon other than these ones that have been data mined and whatnot, they might not show up on this list. And this is not the definitive account of all of the Pokemon returning in the Indigo Disc. Obviously, there are also new Pokemon. These are just the returners, and these are also the non-restricted Pokemon. So I'm not including Ho-Oh and Lugia, I think, are coming back. Zekrom and Reshiram, I think, like, we're not doing those. We're just doing the Pokemon that have been VGC viable in the past, VGC legal in the past, rather, in non-restricted formats. Another thing is that the last time that I did one of these, Cerebee was wrong about, you know, some of these Pokemon were on the list as returning for the Teal Mask, but in fact, they were returning in the Indigo Disc. So you might see some Pokemon from that list here again, just from some, I mean, I don't want to say false reporting. Cerebee's pretty freaking solid as far as reporting is concerned, but some maybe misled guidance there. And I think that because this is the only other DLC that's happening for this game, all these Pokemon should be returning, right? They were in trailers and stuff. That being said, obviously there will be more, and if any of these are wrong, I got it from Cerebee, man. Don't blame me, blame Joe. And the only other thing I'll say is that, you know, my criteria for ranking these, I think, is generally going to be how good the Pokemon's going to be. You know, if you follow the channel, that I use weird Pokemon all the time. At no point am I going to say that any of these Pokemon are unusable. Even the Pokemon in the D tier list, you're going to see on thumbnails in the future, right? Because I like using weird Pokemon. I like trying to make them work. So even if I say right here that a Pokemon is bad, doesn't mean that it's bad, right? It really just means I see it having to work harder to be on a team and to be viable than some of the other Pokemon that we're going to be talking about today. I also don't think I'm going to rank things in order of like left to right better than others like that. I think I'm just going to put them in the tier list and then have that be, you know, no particular order as far as the ranking within a specific tier. I'm also going to move them around as we go because I'm probably going to change my mind on a bunch of stuff. All right, let's kick things off here with Venusaur. Venusaur, to me, of these returning Pokemon, because again, this pool is within the Pokemon that are returning, not necessarily like Venusaur will be an S tier Pokemon in VGC as a whole. Just of these Pokemon returning, I think that Venusaur, it's going to go in the S tier for me. I think that Venusaur is an interesting Pokemon because in Sword and Shield, it obviously did so well. It's so nice in Chlorophyll to have that like really fast, bulky sleep powder user, and it didn't Dynamax all the time. And I think that's such a good, if something was really good in VGC, but it wasn't necessarily because it was Dynamaxing, that's a really good Pokemon to me. It wasn't even using that regional gimmick. And so I think that Venusaur with Terra is a thing that will be very, very annoying and pivotal for a lot of Pokemon, especially on the ranked ladder where you're best of one closed team sheet. We have Blastoise here. Blastoise is tougher, better in singles as far as I know, just for the rapid spin use. It's a bulky Pokemon. It does get Fake Out. I'm going to put it in the B tier for now. Bulky water Pokemon, but not better than a lot of other bulky water Pokemon. I love Blastoise, for the record. My first ever starter Pokemon. Love that guy. But I'm going to put him in B tier for now, and we'll see what other Pokemon end up there, and if I feel like he should get knocked up or down. I think B is a solid place for Blastoise, and there might even be some nostalgia that's earning him some points there. Next, we got Vileplume. Vileplume is also a Chlorophyll Sleep Powder user. It also gets Strength Sap, and Venusaur doesn't even get that. I'm going to say it's like a worse Venusaur, in my opinion. It's grass, it's poison, it gets chlorophyll. But there's a reason people use Venusaur more, and I think that for that reason, within this pool of Pokemon, Vileplume is also going to go in B, just because why would you use Vileplume over Venusaur? In many cases. Feel free. Hey, Troy, thanks for subscribing. In many cases, I think, let me know in the comments below why you think you'd use. I think it's mostly going to be that Strength Sap in very specific niche scenario teams. Dodrio. I don't know really much about this Pokemon, to be totally honest with you. I suppose I could also be looking stuff up as we go. What's Dodrio's whole deal? I think I'm going to put it in C for now. It just doesn't seem like it gets any interesting tricks that would put it above a lot of other stuff. It gets Runaway, Early Bird, and Tangled Feet as its abilities. None of that's great. Pokemon Showdown does not have its current move pool because we don't know for sure. That's the other thing, by the way. Any of these Pokemon could be made incredibly viable or not viable based on how many of these new moves that it gets, because we don't even know technically what all the new moves could be or what moves it could get that it didn't get before and it now gets, or moves that it lost, stuff like that. So for me, I'm going to just let Dodrio sit there and see. I think you can do stuff with it. I don't think it's D tier garbage, but I also don't think that it's really remarkable in any way whatsoever. Another Chlorophyll user, so many of those in Kanto, and they're all returning in the Indigo Disc. So some teams getting another buff somehow. I think that Exeggutor also gets Harvest, right? I don't know. I know Wolfie's a huge fan of Exeggutor, so maybe this is like sacrilege. I'm going to put Exeggutor also in B. B could be a pretty large tier. I mean, it's average, right? It's right in the middle, so B is usually probably where a lot of my thumbnail Pokemon sit. I think Exeggutor is going to go there for me right now. I know that it can do some really annoying stuff, especially with a Harvest set. That makes it honestly more exciting for me than Vileplume. But I don't think it's like A tier worthy. A tier for me is going to be like anything sitting just outside of incredible, right? And I think Venusaur belongs in S. Yeah, I can see some other A tier Pokemon coming up later. Let's move on to Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee is also a fake out user. And, it lost its coaching returning. I think that's a huge part of this because it also gets Unburden. I'm going to put Hitmonlee in B. I think maybe just because I know how to use it. It's fake out, it's Unburden, and I know that you can also run coaching with it. So I ran a team back in the day, in the old Sword and Shield days, where you'd get Grassy Seed, Hitmonlee next to Rillaboom, and you could fake things out. You could coaching your Rillaboom. I don't know if coaching is returning in the game. I think you can metronome coaching, which makes me believe that it will be returning with a lot of those Isle of Armor moves that aren't already in the game. But I'm going to put it in B tier because I do think that Hitmonlee can do some stuff. I don't think it's necessarily bad. But to me, Hitmonchan is a Pokemon that is very similar to Hitmonlee, obviously, and just doesn't get some of the fun things. It gets more type coverage, but I don't think that that makes it a better Pokemon for a playthrough, not necessarily for VGC. Unless your type coverage is really like god awful, you have other Pokemon that cover those things for you. So I think that Hitmonchan's going to go here. It's like more defensive than Hitmonlee, but I think it doesn't get fake out, and it's missing a couple of those tools that I think just gets Hitmonlee into the V tier. So Hitmonchan for me is going to go C. Let's see, Dugong here. Dugong's going to be my first D tier Pokemon, I think, unless I'm missing something about Dugong and what it gets. Thick Fat, Hydration, and Ice Body. I mean, it is an Ice type, so it'll get things from Snow. Is it also the only Ice type Pokemon returning? Wow. I think it's the only Ice type that's returning as far as these confirmed trailer, Pokemon are concerned in the... Oh, no, sorry. Lapras is literally right next. But yeah, I think Dugong, I think it's tough for Dugong in this world where there are other better water and ice types and much better water types specifically. And I just don't think that Dugong gets some of the stuff that others would. Like, why would you run Dugong over a lot of other things? I do want to just check this very quickly to ensure that that's true. Where's like my anything goes format? Here we go. In the past, it's got base 70 speed. It gets like Encore, which is a cool move. It gets Fake Out? It got Fake Out in the past. That's interesting, actually. Okay, it gets Perish Song. I think I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to leave it in D for now. Some stuff has got to go in the D tier, so I think I'm going to put Dugong there. Let's move on to Lapras here. Lapras gets hurt pretty bad by the fact, like, Lapras's usage was pretty high. But it was also mostly because of its Gigantamax form. And I just don't know. Well, yeah, I think that what Lapras gets that's going to knock it to B instead of just a C tier Pokemon for me as a non-Gigantamaxable Pokemon now is the fact that it's an Ice type. And I think that if you're in Snow with that defense, if you're like a bulky Ice type, there's reason now to use you with that defense boost in Snow that we didn't get in past generations, which is exciting for Ice type Pokemon. So I think that Lapras is going to go in the middle there. And by the way, it also gets Perish Song like Dugong does. So another thing that outclasses Lapras over Dugong, unfortunately for Dugong. But I think I'll leave Lapras in the B tier for now. Up next we have Meganium. Oh man, I like this Pokemon a lot, but it's going in the D tier for me. Meganium, I mean, what the heck do you even get, dude? Overgrow, you get Leaf Guard, which is just not a great ability. If Sunny Day is active, the Pokemon cannot be statused, and Rest will fail for it. So you can't even run a Rest set. Yeah, I don't know. It's not a good. It just does not have an awesome move pool. It gets like Aromatherapy. I just don't know what Meganium can possibly do that a lot of other Pokemon can't. It gets Heal Pulse. Maybe in VGC, having a Grass type that can Heal Pulse. I don't know how many of those are. But there's also like, I don't know. Isn't Comfey returning? It's not on this list here. So Cerebi doesn't have it listed yet, but there's just other Pokemon that do things better than it, unfortunately. Sorry, Meganium. Now we have Feraligatr. This could be totally nostalgia putting it in here. I'm going to put it in B. Feraligatr getting Sheer Force and Dragon Dance in the past really makes it so much fun to use. I definitely used it on like the singles street pass. What was that called back in I think I used it in X and Y and in Sun and Moon, where you would just like randomly match with people online and hope that they also wanted a single battle with a team that was, usable. And that's what I was doing with my Sheer Force Dragon Dance. Not even good IV for Alligator. Did I say Swords Dance? I meant Dragon Dance. Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I think it's useful. I still think it's way better in singles than it would be in doubles. And it doesn't help that it's like coming into a format where Rillaboom is already legal. But I'll put it in B here for now. Again, from this pool of Pokemon returning, Feraligatr is going to be way lower than B in the grand scheme of VGC Pokemon in this next rule set. But from this returning set, I'll put Feraligatr right there. Now I got Bellossom. I'm pretty sure Bellossom's it's also a chlorophyll user. I mean, dear God. But it's worse. Oh, it gets Quiver Dance. And it gets Strength Sap. Part of me feels like if I have Vileplume there, then I also have to have Bellossom there. Quiver Dance is what maybe makes it interesting for me. How good are its stats? They're all... Well, special attack is 90. Special defense is 100. Speed is only 50. In the Sun, could a Quiver Dance set work? It's a lot of work, honestly, to put into a Pokemon. I'm going to drop Bellossom here to C tier. I think I might also end up putting Vileplume in C tier. We haven't reached... We're still in Johto, which is famously one of the weaker gens as far as, like, viable Pokemon is concerned. So I'm going to knock it to C. There's a lot of Pokemon incoming. It looks like I'm being pretty harsh on the A tier Pokemon, but they all come in a lot later. We also have some, like, pseudo legends that come in. or rather like legendary trio Pokemon and stuff like that. And we haven't hit any of those yet. So I'm going to drop Blossom there to maybe make room for some of those Pokemon that are coming up later. Skarmory is cool. Skarmory is interesting. It's also entering the scene before Ferrothorn is, as far as we know. So there's also Corviknight. Is Corviknight better than Skarmory? What are the things that would... I mean, Corviknight's not on this list, right? So I really shouldn't be judging it based on Corviknight, but let's just look at it. Corviknight's defense is 105. Skarmory's is 140. Corviknight's special defense is 85. Skarmory's is 70. So a little more physically bulky, a little less special bulky than Corviknight. Similar attack stats there. Corviknight has better HP. Skarmory is a little faster. I'm going to put it in the B tier. I'll give Skarmory a B. We'll throw Johto a bone there. Because up next we have this Pokemon. I'm going to put Smeargle in A tier. Smeargle's a really good Pokemon. Smeargle's a really good Pokemon. It gets a lot of stuff. It did get nerfed since it's the last time we saw it. Because what Smeargle was doing in the past when it was like dominant, it wasn't in Sword and Shield at all, which is tough for me to rank because Sword and Shield was really the most I ever played competitive until now in Scarlet and Violet. And so I know of Smeargle and the tales of what Smeargle would do. The biggest things that it would do is like Dark Void. Smeargle can get basically any move in the game, so it would be able to sit there, and even in formats where Darkrai wasn't allowed, it could still use Darkrai's signature move. And Dark Void opponents took both of them to sleep as a double target move, and also sit there with Moody boosts so that it could like become more evasive and harder to hit, or more defensive, or faster, so that it would outspeed Pokemon and then get them to go to sleep. And there's no sleep clause in VGC, which makes it really, really scary. Now, what they did do is they altered Dark Void so that it's illegal on Smogon, so it's not telling me right now what it does do, but it's less accurate, I believe, is the biggest thing, which does hurt Smeargle. Darkrai is in the game, though. I believe Darkrai is in Scarlet and Violet already. You can get it like right now, right? Isn't it currently a mystery gift that you can go get with a code at the moment? Which means that Smeargle can learn Dark Void. So I'm going to put it in A tier. I think it could easily be S tier, but I think my lack of personal experience with it is going to put it in A right now. We'll see if I change that by the end of this. Here comes Hitmontop. I'm going to put Hitmontop in A tier. I had it as one of the best Pokemon returning in the Teal Mask back when I was misinformed and thought that it was coming back in the Teal Mask. And the main reason for that was the fact that Incineroar was not in the game yet. The fact that Hitmontop is now entering with Incineroar means that you're never going to see Hitmontop. You're going to see Hitmontop. Let me be clear. Hitmontop does get a couple things that Incineroar doesn't. Like, it gets Wide Guard. It gets, stab, close combat. It gets, it used to get Triple Axle. I think Triple Axle's returning. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to put it in the A tier here with the understanding that you might see it far less just because it does a lot of the same things that Incineroar does in Intimidate, Fake Out. Those are the main things. It's a better Intimidate or Fake Out user, or it's a worse Intimidate, Fake Out user than Incineroar. So if Incineroar is as good as I think it's going to be, I think Hitmontop, I'm going to put it in A because I believe in what it can do. And on certain team makeups, like if I'm trying to make a fire type Pokemon, like a weird fire type Pokemon work, I might run Hitmontop instead so I don't double up on fire types with Incineroar. And it'll work pretty good. Just not as good as Incineroar. Generally, I'm going to put it in A tier, but with the caveat that it gets pretty hard outclassed by, the best Pokemon of our entire generation. Raikou here. Raikou has good stats. But does it get things that make it incredible? I'm going to put Raikou in B. Raikou in B tier. It gets pressure and inner focus. All right, it lost Volt Absorb. It's pretty rough. So now it's inner focus. It can't be flinched. That's pretty nice. And, it does get like Calm Mind. It gets E-Speed, but you're not going to use that over, for a special attacker too much. And its move pool just isn't sick. Its special move pool. It gets like R Sphere, and it gets Shadow Ball. It gets Scald, or at least it used to, so it might not anymore. That's interesting. And it gets Weather Ball. I'm going to put it in B tier for now. Hope everybody's cool with that. Moving on to Entei. Entei is going to go in A tier. Entei is a physical attacker that gets E-Speed and gets Sacred Fire. And Sacred Fire, I mean, one of the best fire moves in the world. 100 base power, 95% accuracy, so pretty good accuracy. And a 50% chance to burn the target. I mean, that's wild. That's a really, really good Pokemon. And on certain team make, and it's not quad weak to water and ground like Arcanine is. Now, it doesn't get Intimidate like Hisuian Arcanine does, but it gets Inner Focus, which means that it can't be intimidated itself or flinched. It's a really, really good Pokemon. I'm going to put Entei, the Inner Focus works so much better on Entei than it does on Raikou. I'm going to put Entei in A tier. Suicune, I'm also going to put in A tier, because I just know for a fact that as far as bulky water types go, Suicune is one of the best to ever do it. It gets, the things that bulky water types do in like Icy Wind, and it gets Scald, or at least it used to in the past. I wouldn't be surprised if Suicune gets Scald again because, its Paradox form, which might be usable in January, but we're not sure yet. I hope it is. Because if it's not, then that also probably means that Giraffe Raikou isn't usable in VGC, and why introduce Pokemon that you're not going to let people use? But I think it's also a Tailwind setter, so for that reason, I think that Suicune absolutely belongs in A tier. It's a Tailwind setter and a bulky water type. That's really, really quite solid, in my opinion. And it gets E-Speed, even though, it's a special attacker also. Next up, we got my boy Sceptile. Now, I love Sceptile. I'm going to put Sceptile in S tier. It's such a cool design. Even if it is, has dog's dinner stats, and absolutely they gave it no moves whatsoever that it can really take advantage of. Just a really tough Pokemon that they decided, like, you know what, we're going to give it an awesome special attack stat, but we're going to give it really good physical attacking moves. So that you really have to choose between, do I want to use good moves with my worst stat, or do I only want to use Leaf Storm with the dominant attack stat that I do have here? Obviously, Sceptile's not S tier. I'm going to put Sceptile in C tier. It gets Unburden, which is fun, but it doesn't even get, like, Sleep Powder. It gets Dragon Dance, which is such a cool move, but its special attack stat is higher. Its physical attack stat is only base 85. So it really has a hard time taking advantage of that. You just need a lot of support for Sceptile. And it has some holes in its physical attack coverage as well. And this is before they started purging a lot of Pokemon's movesets. So I love Sceptile. I wish I could put Sceptile higher than this. But just, I know for a fact that it's been hard to use in the past. The one thing that honestly might be nice is the fact that it gets Unburden and Terra and Acrobatics. And in the past, I'd run, Swords Dance Unburden sets with Acrobatics, which was hard to make work because Sceptile doesn't even get Stab on Acrobatics. Now it can. So maybe there's something there. I mean, we've seen Roaring Moon use Acrobatics sets to really positive use, but I think I just had such a hard time using Sceptile, one of my favorite Pokemon in the past, that, I'm going to put that in C for now. Blaziken will go B. Blaziken is Speed Boost, which I don't think that you can really underestimate how good that is for a Pokemon. With just one Protect, all of a sudden, it's got a pretty solid base 80 speed, and then it has a Speed Boost. So I think that's pretty good. If you can survive another turn after that, which you absolutely can, I mean, just Focus Sash it, all of a sudden you can get to 3 Speed Boosts with a Protect, survive a move, Protect, and now you have 3 Speed Boosts. It doesn't get a ton of spread moves to take full advantage of that, but it's got a really good attack stat in 120, and it's got a really good special attack stat as well in 110, which means that you could also run it special. And now that I'm looking at it, did I know that Blaziken got Scorching Sands in the past? That's interesting. It's got a lot better move pool and viability than Sceptile does, with similarly a speed boosting ability. So in my mind, I'm going to put Blaziken in B. I'm going to put Swampert also in B. How confident am I in that? It's only got one weakness, which I think is really good. It's got a pretty bad hidden ability. It's got Damp as its hidden ability. Just not something you're going to use unless all of a sudden an explosion strat becomes like really dominates VGC, which is just never really going to happen. And its move pool isn't awesome. It gets like Yawn, and it's more of a Pokemon that's there to bother opponents. More there to bother opponents than it is. But like I think like an Assault Vest set could be really nice, or like a Curse set. It also used to get Scald. We'll see. I don't know. I feel like I can't judge based on what gets Scald anymore because so many Pokemon lost it, even though it is back. Icy Wind. I could see it working on a like an Assault Vest bulky set, and only being weak to grass is really, really nice. I'll leave it there for now. I'm looking at some of my earlier picks, and I'm like I'm literally right now going to drop Vileplume to here. I think. That seems fair to me. I mean, yeah, Blastoise probably... I don't know. We'll leave it there for now. Plusle and Minun. Yes, D tier. Finally, some more Pokemon that can pop into the D tier there. Very excited. Guys, these abilities are really bad. It gets Lightning Rod as an ability, technically. You're never going to use it over a different Lightning Rod Pokemon. Okay? Because what else is true of Plusle and Minun? Like, they're just so outclassed by Raichu. It's crazy. I know that I'm trying to do this based on this pool of Pokemon, but I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of flip-flopping there. Apologies on that. But it doesn't even get Fake Out. Its speed stat is 95, so it's not even over 100. Like, it got speed crept so hard when it was introduced. Yeah, Plusle and Minun. Plusle and Minun. Does Minun also have Lightning Rod? No, Minun gets Volt Absorb. That's interesting. Technically, Plusle is better than Minun. No, I'm going to put them both in D. They're just so hard outclassed by other Pokemon. I know I'm breaking my rule by introducing other Pokemon to the conversation, but that's where it's going. Flygon. C tier. Sadly. It's weak to things. It's weak to Flutter Mane. It's weak to Ice Pokemon, which are now buffed. And it's outclassed by, again, breaking my rule, Garchomp. I don't want Flygon to be bad. But right now it is. I'd love for Flygon to get some kind of cool move that it didn't get before that all of a sudden makes it very, very usable. But just having Levitate as an ability just isn't great because it's the Pokemon that's usually using Earthquake. You know what I mean? Like, the best thing about Levitate is that you're immune to Earthquake, and if your ground-type Pokemon is the one using Earthquake, you don't even really benefit from Levitate. It's one of the more frustrating things I've experienced about Flygon. And also, it doesn't have a hidden ability. Is that true? Did Flygon just never get a hidden ability? Yeah, no hidden ability for Flygon. That's insane. Is it because it hasn't been in the game in forever? Why would it not have a hidden ability at all? That's very strange. I wish, yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it gets a hidden ability now that makes it really good. Maybe it gets multi-scale or something that could make it actually pretty solid as a Pokemon. It gets some cool moves. It gets Tailwind too. But, you know, a lot of Pokemon now that we're entering the second DLC are going to be Tailwind users, and there's just such better ones than Flygon. I'm going to put Flygon in C for now. I don't want to. I know there's a lot of Pokemon people's favorites, but he's going in C for now. Metagross. Metagross is a really good Pokemon. I'm going to put it in A. I think it's very, very good, and I think that Terra is a thing that helps Metagross out a lot, either to increase its damage output with Bullet Punch, which could be fantastic. It gets Clear Body, so it can't be intimidated, or Icy Winded, which is really, really nice. And Bullet Punch is obviously its bread and butter. Now, it did lose its Mega, but that was a while ago. It has a really good physical attack pool. It gets Icy Wind, too. You could run Icy Wind on it if you wanted, and it's got a 95 special attack stat. I mean, it's got a 135 physical attack stat. Pretty hard to ignore. But, yeah, you could run Icy Wind on it, too, if you need. I'm going to put, yeah, Metagross goes in A tier. It's got just such a good physical, offensive typing. And, you know, dark types are an issue, but only, you know, you can build a team around that. Metagross A tier for sure. Next, we got Latios. Latios and Latios also don't have hidden abilities as far as Showdown is concerned. Some Levitators. I think Latios is better than Latios. For the fact that it can use Recover, right? Just having Recover. No, Latios gets Recover too. I want to put Latios in A, and I'm going to put Latios in B. Undeniably, they're both really good Pokemon. And again, really solid offensive typings with, you know, Dragon only being resisted by Steel and being immune by Fairy. Everything else it hits for neutral. So when your special attack stat for Latios is 130, it's a pretty big deal. But Latios herself only has 110 special attack, which is really also very solid. And you get that nice 130 in your special defense stat instead. They both have the same speed stat. So typically Latios in the past just being able to live more moves and get off more like T-Waves or potentially running like a Calm Mindset. Stuff like that. Does it also get... It also gets Tailwind, yeah. As a Tailwind setter, you want to bulk your Pokemon, then you necessarily want an offensive Pokemon like Latios to support the rest of your team instead of necessarily taking advantage of it yourself. So Latios, better than Latios. I'm going to put Latios in A. I'm going to put Latios in B. Rampardos here. My instinct says C. Rampardos gets Mold Breaker and Sheer Force. Two really good abilities. But it is just like a flat out rock type, and it's only got base 58 speed. So if you can get a move off, it has a base 165 physical attack stat, which is pretty crazy. And that means that you can Earthquake stuff that's levitating, or you know, you could Fire Punch a Heatran if you really wanted to with Mold Breaker. I don't know why you wouldn't just Earthquake it, but technically you could. Of course, it also was the original Head Smash user, which does have half recoil, but if you can land that... I mean, you probably run Rock Slide on it more on VGC than you would Head Smash, but you could pretty much KO anything, I think, in the game with 165 stab Head Smash. 165 attack stat. Stab Head Smash. Head Smash has base 150. Yeah, that's a pretty good move. That's a pretty good move. I'm going to put it in D and C, though, so not in D. Just for the fact that it's not fast enough to outspeed a lot of stuff. It's not slow enough to underspeed a lot of stuff. And just being a solid rock typing is just not awesome defensively. So you kind of need a speed stat that fits into one of those two. Like, you either want to be really slow or really fast. And I don't think Rampardos is either. So super effective moves are going to be hitting it more often. Bastiodon, I'll also put in C. It's a defensive wall, but other things do it better. It gets Sturdy, which frustrates me to no end when a super defensive Pokemon... I mean, this Pokemon gets 168 defense and 138 special defense. Really, really hard to hit this Pokemon, to one-hit this Pokemon. And it gets Sturdy. Why would you need Sturdy at that point? And it also gets Soundproof, which, to my knowledge, you know, you could run it on a Perish Trap team. Cool, man. Yeah, like, I might try that in a team. Who knows? Maybe we can make it work. But like, if you were to run it on like a Boom Burst team, where it could also be cool to have Soundproof, it already resists that anyway. Like, you might pick that even if it didn't have Soundproof, just because it wouldn't do a ton of damage to it. It double resists it. And being Rock Steel, there's other Pokemon you're going to run in Trick Room. It has 30 speed, which is slow enough for Trick Room, but you're just going to run other Pokemon over it. You don't typically run stall slow Pokemon in Trick Room. I don't know. Doesn't impress me much. We're going to go C tier. Rhyperior. Rhyperior was really good with Dynamax for the whole weakness policy situation. I think that it's not as good now. But what does Rhyperior get? It gets Lightning Rod, which, depending on how dominant... Raging Thunder. Is that what it's called? Raging Thunder? Yeah. Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt. This Raikou variant is, or potentially, honestly, when man, Raging Bolt is going to be cool, and then all of a sudden it's going to almost get immediately outclassed by Miraidon, huh? Because they're both Dragon Electric. It's kind of a bummer. Why'd they do that? I think Lightning Rod could come in handy, and it's one of the best Pokemon to do it with because it can also then turn around and hit electric Pokemon for super effective damage. I'll put Rhyperior in A. I'm not scared of doing that, I don't think. It's also a really, really good Trick Room sweeper. Even if you can't pull the exact same strats as you could with the weakness policy, you still could use, like, Bulldoze. Is Bulldoze the one that lowers your speed and hits everybody on the field, so then it lowers Rhyperior even further? I think that's Bulldoze. I think that's, yeah. And I think that it would still work really well for Rhyperior. So I'm going to put it in A tier. I think it's my riskiest A tier pick so far, looking at the rest of these Pokemon. But I'm going to put Rhyperior in A tier. Electivire for me goes in... I'm already seeing some things that I disagree with myself in some of these tier picks as I'm looking at them, because I'm like, Electivire for me is a C tier Pokemon, but is it worse than some of the Pokemon I have in B tier? No. I'll bump it up to B. It has a really cool physical move pool and a 123 physical attack stat. I think that it's outclassed by a lot of electric Pokemon, but it does get Motor Drive, which raises its speed when hit by an electric move, and it gets immune to the electric move, so kind of like Volt Absorb, but with a speed boost instead of a health recovery. It also gets Vital Spirit, so you can't Spore it. That's interesting, I suppose. Yeah, I'll put it in B tier. I think I have to put Magmortar in C, though. Magmortar just doesn't impress me very much, because Electivire gets 95 base speed. Magmortar only has 83 base speed, which is just too middling for me. It gets Flame Body, but, you know, I don't think that doesn't do much to help it become more viable, necessarily. It gets Lava Plume, which is interesting. Some more Lava Plume strats than we've ever seen before in Scarlet and Violet. But it's not faster than a lot of Pokemon. So I don't even know that it's still not as good as, like, Lava Plume Chi-Yu or something like that. It did get Scorching Sands snuck in there at some point during its move pool, which I don't know if that'll be back, right? But 125 special attack stat could make use of that. I'm keeping it in C for now. Being Pure Fire also doesn't help it. Because Pure Electric can work, but Pure Fire just has too many common weaknesses, especially in VGC, right? You gotta be aware of, like, Urshifu coming at you with the Surging Strikes, but also just, like, any ground move or rock move, Earthquake and Rock Slide, both of which being spread moves. Like, it's dangerous to be weak to those moves. We'll put it there. Serperior, definitely going in B. I think Serperior being a Galare user, and also, obviously, the contrary Leaf Storm. We haven't seen Serperior in a while, right? Did Serperior make its way into Sword and Shield ever? I'm forgetting. But yeah, just for the fact that it gets contrary. And we do have one more contrary Pokemon returning before the end of this video. But I think that, like, the Coil set could be cool. And also, the fact that it gets Terra Blast means that it spreads out its ability to deal... you know, like it gets more moves, which is also true of my boy Sceptile, by the way. Something I didn't mention when Sceptile was up is, like, all special attackers. It's true physical attackers too, I guess, but you know, all special attackers specifically get Terra Blast now, which they can use as a normal move if they need to in a situation where they're up against a poison Pokemon and it's like, oh, I can't click my grass move, it's resisted. Well, I already used my Terra, but I can still use this normal move, and I'm at +2 from a Leaf Storm or whatever. So Terra Blast is nice for that, but and it's not physical. It doesn't do that same thing for physical Pokemon. I may have lost you on that. I apologize if I have. But Terra Blast technically better on special attackers than physical attackers, and having the ability to suddenly hit something with, like, a fire move or an ice move could be nice for something like Serperior. So I'll keep it in B. Emboar, on the other hand, I mean, is Emboar even C tier? It gets Reckless and it gets a lot of self-recoil moves, so there's a lot of synergy there. I'll put Emboar in C instead of D. Its middling speed is always going to be tough. If you're too fast for Trick Room but too slow for Tailwind, like, that's always going to be tough. I feel like I can make this Pokemon work. Like, this Pokemon can be in a video and it can do well. because it gets Flare Blitz, it gets Rock Head. No. Head Smash, Rock Head. Rock Head an ability? So it does, and it gets Reckless, which means that its attacks with recoil or crash damage have 1.2 times power. Really, really good for some of these moves. Better in singles in my mind, because the moves that have, like, none of the recoil moves like that are spread moves. So it's really only good for like one KO before all of a sudden you're too slow to outspeed something else and then you just die before you're able to get off another one. Because you're also now at half health, by the way, because you just one-shot something with a recoil move. It's a C-tier Pokemon, for sure. Zebstrika definitely was not in Sword and Shield. Weird Pokemon. Also a Lightning Rod user. Also a Motor Drive user. It gets both. And Sap Sipper. Okay. And it is a physical attacker. So, Zebstrika could be possible, technically. No idea what its move pool looks like these days. And also, it's not going to be updated here for what it got in Sword and Shield. Because it wasn't in Sword and Shield. So, it never really got a Gen 8 move pool. Which makes it kind of hard to value. I'm going to put it in C. Because I believe in it. I believe it's not a D tier Pokemon. Come on, Zebstrika. You can do something. Okay, now we're going into Whimsicott. Whimsicott, I think people aren't as scared of Whimsicott returning because they're so dead set on Incineroar. Gang, Whimsicott is maybe... Like, there's really good reason to be scared of Whimsicott. Like, I almost want to put Whimsicott in Incineroar tier. Like, that's how good Whimsicott might end up being. It's the best prankster Pokemon there is. It can run with, like, you can run a timid one for speed, or you can run a super bulky one, and it's still much faster than a lot of prankster Pokemon, and it gets way better status moves than something like Tornadus does. So while Tornadus might technically be a better Tailwind setter, you know, you can encore stuff with Whimsicott. You can just do stuff that Tornadus can't. My thought process here is, do I put Whimsicott in Incineroar tier? I think I might. We'll put Whimsicott in S tier. The reason why Whimsicott is technically super scary, and it's not just because of what it's done in the past. Whimsicott also now gets Covert Cloak, which is something that people, I think, are not thinking about as, you know, Whimsicott can now hold Covert Cloak and not get flinched, which is massive for Whimsicott. And its ability to just immediately start doing things for the team, which is a huge buff. It's a huge buff for Whimsicott. It also now gets Terra, which means that you could Ghost Terra to suddenly live your last move and stuff like that. There's probably an even better Terra, because I think bulky Whimsicott could end up being pretty good. I'm going to put Whimsicott in S tier for now, but I wouldn't be surprised if Whimsicott ends up being Incineroar tier. It's just so good. You're going to see it everywhere. You're going to be so sick and tired of seeing Whimsicott. It's crazy. Next, we have Sinnoh. And the fact that I had to think about what this Pokemon was called does not bode well for it. It does get Skill Link and Technician. And it gets some cool multi-hit moves. So, you know, there's some stuff that it can do. I don't think it puts it higher than C tier, though. We'll go C tier for Sinnoh. Reuniclus. I love Reuniclus so much. I think that it's really good. It gets some of the best abilities in the game. It gets Overcoat, which already is like a pretty... Like, if your Pokemon gets Overcoat, you're like, oh, cool, there's stuff I can use this for. I you know, don't got to worry about Spore. I don't got to worry about Rage Powder. I don't got to worry about, you know, weather damage. But then it gets Magic Guard as well. And then it also gets Regenerator, which is probably the best ability that it can run. All of that inside a Pokemon that can actually work as a offensive threat. That thing can really hit hard. It's a Trick Room Pokemon, and it's a Trick Room setter too, which I think is good. I'm gonna put Reuniclus in B tier. I know how to use Reuniclus, so I'm gonna put it there. Other people might put it lower. I'm gonna put it there. Technically, it's a better singles Pokemon than a doubles Pokemon too, but I'm gonna put it in B tier. I'm going to follow up by putting Galvantula in B tier too. I think it's interesting just for the fact that it can set sticky webs. Again, not something you see. You don't see a ton of hazards in VGC, but I think it's interesting. and fun as an idea to play with. Pretty solid special attacking move pool, which is what you're going to want. It's got Giga Drain. It's got Bug Buzz. You know, better than your typical electric Pokemon. Better than like your Reggie, Alecki kinds of electric types. And it gets Struggle Bug. I think that's how I used to. If I've run a Galvantula in the past, I probably ran it with Struggle Bug and Thunderbolt and Volt Switch and Sticky Webs or something like that. I think it's cool. I'm going to put it in B tier. Again, I'm being well aware that people might put it lower. Golurk will go, I think we'll go C. Is Golurk the only ghost type returning so far confirmed? Wow. I'm looking at it like, wow, Golurk, a ghost type. Ghost types are always good. They can't get faked out. And then I'm like, oh my god, wait, it's the only confirmed returning ghost type Pokemon. That's crazy. Golurk just isn't, it gets no guard. And it gets Iron Fist. Feels like a good Pokemon. This is another Pokemon that I'm like, it's definitely better than some of these B tier Pokemon, right? Like, what am I doing with some of these guys up there? He's 55 speed, a little too fast for Trick Room, in my opinion. Being able to land dynamic punches with no guard is pretty cool. Or just Iron Fist, hitting stuff hard with Iron Fist. Golurk is interesting. I'm gonna leave it in C though. Cobalion. Cobalion's a really good Pokemon, and Justified is pretty nice. Kind of a niche ability, but it is pretty good. And Iron Head, Sacred Sword. This Pokemon, it gets Volt Switch weirdly, which like might seem kind of silly to run on a physical attacker, but actually, it's not a physical attacker. It's base 90 attack and base 90 special attack. I always forget that. So you can run like an, you know, like a special set if you really wanted to. You might have to run Focus Blast at that point. Cobalion's cool, but not A tier. So I'm going to put it in B. Terrakion. I think this trio is all going to go in. Terrakion was really good. I'm remembering. Base 108 speed. Terrakion's really good. I'm going to put Terrakion in A tier. Another risky A tier pick potentially. And I also think the Terrakion might be outclassed by something like a Great Tusk now. But I kind of like it in A tier. I have faith that it can do well. We're going to put Virizion in B tier. Also, you know, it's got the stats to keep it out of C tier. But I do think that Virizion's probably the worst of this trio. Like, I think that Cobalion is way better than Virizion. And there's just so many good grass types out there and so many good fighting types out there that you just would choose over Virizion. I'm going to put it in B tier, though, just because I can't knock it to C. The Meowstics. Meowstic, do they go in different places? They do. Because Meowstic female gets competitive and Meowstic male gets prankster. I mean, they're not bad abilities at all. I think that the male Meowstic goes higher, and my question just, I'm going to put them both in B, actually. Knowing that the male Meowstic's better. Sorry, you know, get mad at the game. There's a non-feministic Game Freak that gave the male prankster and the female competitive. But the male Meowstic, I think I've used it with like Thunderwave. It also gets it gets Fake Out. They both get Fake Out. But it gets Trick, it gets Yawn, it gets a lot of stuff that you can take advantage of with Prankster. Not nearly as good as something like Whimsicott, but it's also pretty fast. 104 speed. I could see like a Covert Cloak Meowstic doing well. And then just having competitive, I think, makes you a B tier Pokemon, especially as a special attacker, because then you're not even worried about the fact that like Intimidators are coming in and only giving you a +1 because it's subtracting 1 first. It's just giving you competitive. It's not Defiant, right? It's just competitive. So in a world full of Intimidators, especially with now the main Intimidator coming back, I think female Meowstic could also go in B. It's got a pretty fun move set too. Some fun coverage in there. Gets Thunderbolt, gets Energy Ball. Now we have... Ooh. Always forget what this Pokemon's called. What are you? Inkay's older brother. Oh my god, what is it called? Malamar. Malamar, I think, goes in B. I've seen Malamar do some stuff. It's also a contrary user. It doesn't get Leaf Storm, but what Malamar gets is... It used to get Superpower. We'll see if it still gets Superpower. This didn't Lurantis lose? Lurantis lost one of its really important contrary boosting items. On top of all that, though, it can also set Trick Room, which is really, really good. So... and you can't intimidate it. Intimidating it only helps it. So I think that like a physical attacking Malamar who can set Trick Room can put in some work, and definitely will in a future video. We'll put it in B tier. The moment you've all been waiting for, we're finally at Incineroar. I mean, it's pretty, it just goes in the Incineroar tier. Like, it's an incredibly good Pokemon that goes straight to the top. It gets so many good things. It gets Intimidate, it gets Fake Out, it gets Snarl, it gets Parting Shot, it gets Taunt, it gets Flare Blitz, you know, it gets, doesn't it get Drain Punch too? I'm pretty sure it's run Drain Punch before. It gets Bulk Up. There's a lot of things that Incineroar has done in the past. Lots of different ways to run it. Different spreads that you can run on it to make it, oh, it's a jolly Incineroar, so it actually outspeeds some stuff and is more of an offensive threat. Or, oh, it's an Assault Vest bulky Incineroar that's here to make my life a living nightmare because it's also Will-O-Wisping and Snarling everything, so none of my Pokemon can get a full damage output ever. The fact that this Pokemon sat there in a regulation in which Kyogre was also on every team, and it's weak to Kyogre, means that like this thing is broken as hell. I'm not the first person. I'm not the only person. This Pokemon is going to be used all over the place, and I think that Terra is even better for it because it wasn't Dynamaxing before. It was in a rule set in which Kyogre and Dynamax was allowed, and it said, I don't really care about this water-type Pokemon that much. I can still do things, and I don't care about the fact that you really are never going to make me... You're never really going to use the regional mechanic on me. For all of these reasons and more, Incineroar goes in the Incineroar tier, and also, I'd wager, belongs in the Incineroar tier on an overall VGC tier list. Again, I'm not breaking ground here. Incineroar is the best Pokemon, and for that reason, the most annoying Pokemon to ever exist. Primarina, also in the Incineroar tier. No, Primarina is probably in B. Not dominant enough that it goes in everything, but again, I think Primarina is better than a lot of the Pokemon here. I'm going to make some changes here at the end, I think. But Primarina goes in the B tier. Not used as often as an A tier Pokemon. I think Primarina was pretty good there for a minute. It gets Liquid Voice. Pokemon sound-based water moves become water type. Yep, and Moonblast is really, really strong on it. I think Terra Fairy could be really good on Primarina. Water Fairy type. Really good. You can run Liquid Voice with Hyper Voice. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good. I'm going to leave it in B. But then I'm going to make some changes because right now it doesn't belong with some of these other Pokemon. I'm going to knock some things down. Toucannon. Is Toucannon a D tier Pokemon? Toucannon's also weird because I don't think Toucannon was ever in Sword and Shield. Not that anybody was really asking for it. It gets Skill Link as well, and it gets Sheer Force. Without even really looking at most of its moves, it gets Rock Blast. Yeah, Skill Link is like usable on it. It gets Tailwind. It's one of those middling speed tier Pokemon, though. Like, I can make a video out of this Pokemon, but I don't think that I can put it high. It doesn't seem like it gets a lot of things that benefit from Sheer Force if you were going to try and make that happen. Yeah, I'm going to leave Toucannon in D, actually. We'll leave that there. Is Alcremie... It's actually Alcremie, right? Like alchemy? Alcremie? Sweet Veil's interesting. It means that nothing on the field can fall asleep on your side of the field. So really, really nice for that. Aroma Veil is also a nice ability because it means that you and your ally cannot be encored or taunted, which could be really nice for a Trick Room team. It's super unique in that way, too. I don't know anybody that gets both of those abilities. And, you know, it gets, like, Mystical Fire. It gets Encore. It gets some stuff. I could see it working on a Trick Room team. It's got 64 speed, which is, again, right in that middle speed tier, which is annoying for it. But, you know, I think you could, like, Helping Hand with it. It doesn't get Trick Room itself, does it? No. I'll put it in B. I think it's niche enough to get to B, maybe, on some stuff. And then Duraludon, as our last Pokemon, I'm going to knock into A tier here. I think Duraludon's really, really good. I think it didn't need an evolution, and it got one. I think that even if you couldn't use a Eviolite on Duraludon in the future, it would still be an A tier Pokemon. It's really, really good. For people who forget, Duraludon has a 120 base special attack and a 115 base defense, and a pretty solid, for what we're talking about here, 85 base speed. So after Tailwind, after some Icy Winds, 85 is fast enough to outspeed some stuff. And it's got such good, like, Steel Dragon is such a good typing that I think it can really do some work. I think the Terra really helps it out for the things that would hit it for, like, if you do run up against a, you know, like a ground type Pokemon or something like that, you could technically switch to a flying type or a grass type or something. And it's a special attacker, so like I said before, Terra Blast could be pretty solid on it. I've seen it run with Assault Vest sets. I don't know why you wouldn't run a Eviolite now. It's a base 120 special attack Pokemon that now can run a Eviolite, doubling that base 115 defense stat, and its base 50 special defense stat. Not awesome. But again, like the biggest weakness it has is fighting and ground, both of which, like, aren't. Most of those moves in there, especially in VGC that are popular, are physical moves. So it's going to be hitting your physical defense stat, even with its super effective moves that are super effective against it, which really helps Duraludon a lot. Again, yeah, I think even if there wasn't an Archaludon or whatever that thing's going to be coming into the game, like, I would not be surprised if Duraludon is better than Archaludon. And I also think, I don't know what's going to change about Duraludon when it evolves. Like, if it's going to switch its stats around or if it's going to technically be worse in some ways. I don't know. Incineroar gets slower when it evolves into Incineroar, which is crazy. But I think Duraludon might be used more than Archaludon in a weird way. Again, I just don't think that Duraludon needs to run a Eviolite. But it can now, which is crazy. I'm putting Duraludon in A tier. Now that I've put everything on the board right now, I think that I can make some changes. They might not be popular changes. I don't think I'm bumping anything up. I feel pretty solid about everything at least being in the tier, the highest tier that it belongs in. I think I was pretty nice to Blastoise starting things out here, unfortunately. But the main thing about it when I cited it was that it gets Fake Out. Amen. Lots of things get Fake Out, unfortunately. And again, I love Sceptile, Flygon, and Blastoise, but they're all C tier Pokemon, and that's probably part of the reason I love them, you know? I do like weirdos. I think I'm going to knock Swampert down, I think. It gets outclassed by too many things for me, and doesn't do enough with its... If this was a Pokemon that was like so bulky that the fact that it's only weak to grass is hard to like, yeah. Part of the thing about it is that it's not as good as Gastrodon too. Again, I'm breaking my rule all over the place in this video where I'm not talking about things from outside of the tier list. But the fact that it's only weak to grass Pokemon also means that Terra isn't awesome for it. You wouldn't Terra it in most situations because, I mean, you would Terra it to avoid a grass move in like a sticky situation, but it just doesn't take advantage of this new regional mechanic, I think, as well as a lot of other Pokemon do. I'm knocking Swampert down there. And I'll also knock... I think I'm going to knock Exeggutor down, too. It's unfortunate. It makes the tier list as a whole look a little cleaner, so that's nice. Exeggutor. Am I making a huge mistake here? Does Exeggutor get Sleep Powder? It does, right? It does. I actually don't think I can knock it down. Being a chlorophyll user with Sleep Powder, I mean, I guess these two are down here too, right? I'm going to keep Exeggutor there because I do think it's better than these two. Just not, they're all outclassed by Venusaur. I'm going to put Electivire down here. I was maybe a little overzealous for Electivire. I'm going to put Electivire down here. I think this makes me, I feel a little bit better about all these Pokemon. Feraligatr is also probably down here. as I look at it. Yeah, unfortunately, we're going to knock Feraligatr down there, too. A last-minute casualty. I'm going to repeat. All of these Pokemon, I think, could be really fun to use. I'm not particularly excited about using any of these D-tier level Pokemon down here. So, like, to me, it's like these Pokemon are, like, so hard to make viable that, like, why would I ever really even try? Sometimes people are like, oh, I apologize if you're watching this video, but somebody in my comments has been like, hey, you got to use Komala. And I'm like, dude, Komala doesn't do anything. So that's kind of how I feel about a lot of these D-tier Pokemon. These guys have interesting things that I think are really fun to use and try to make work, but they require so much support that it's difficult to make them work. B-tier is like all things that I think can work pretty solidly when surrounded by, you know, solid enough Pokemon, and they all have a niche that I think are pretty good. A-tier Pokemon I could see being on any team, I think Smeargle might even be S-tier. Personally, I'm going to keep it in A-tier just because I have not really been in a rule set with Smeargle yet, so I'm going to put it in A for now. I think that might just be me trying to manifest that it's not as good because it really does sound like the most annoying Pokemon of all time. But all of these Pokemon are really, really good. Hitmontop is going to hurt in its viability. You might see it less often than some of these B-tier Pokemon, in fact, just because Incineroar is coming in at the same time. Everything else I think is really, really solid. S-tier Pokemon right here in Venusaur and Whimsicott. I feel really solid about that. Again, Whimsicott probably has a claim to be an Incineroar tier, but we're going to keep it in S-tier for now. And then, of course, Incineroar, I mean, you're going to see this Pokemon in every single team preview. You are going to be so sick and tired of seeing this Pokemon. I'm going to put it in D tier just to see how it feels. If someday it could be this bad, that would be insane. But it is just the best Pokemon I've ever seen. It really is. Thank you so much for watching this video today. That's going to be the end. Again, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do stream. Please let me know in the comments below what you disagree with here. I want to have fights in the comments. Call me an idiot for putting mine in D tier because you believe it's A tier. Let's do it. I don't really care. This is inviting a ton of opinion here, so it's not like you're inserting your opinion. I'm asking. I want to know, what are the things that you think I'm crazy for putting in the tiers that I did, and what do you agree with? If you do disagree, maybe also throw something. I agree that Duraludon is A tier. However, your slander of Bastiodon cannot be stood for, sir. Like, leave stuff like that. I'd love to hear it. Click the buttons on your way out. Help this video reach more people. I'd appreciate that. We're trying to get to 10K. I hope everybody's enjoying their holiday season. I hope nobody's stressing around the holidays. It can be a tough time depending on your family situation. I hope that it's not a tough time for you. And even if it is, you can do it. You can get past it. And, the new year is right around the corner. Who doesn't love a new year? I'm so excited for the Indigo disc. It's going to be very fun, and I can't wait for January when we get to actually see some of these Pokemon put to use. That's going to be a blast. And I hope that you have your eyes here on the channel because we're going to have videos using most of these Pokemon, coming up in January and February and March until they make us stop using them because restricteds are allowed. And hopefully that's not right away. But, it could be that in March we have a restricted format. Hopefully not. Thanks again for clicking on this video in the first place. And until next time, my name is Berm. See you later.